It's an image that will go down in history. For the first time since fighting ended in 1953, a North Korean leader, in this case the ruthless dictator Kim Jong-un, has set foot in South Korea to declare his supposed intentions for peace and denuclearization. Now the questions are, is this really a moment of peace? What can we expect? And why does everything seem to suddenly be going so smoothly? I mean, is North Korea really willing to give up that nuclear bomb? Well, dear viewer, these are some of the questions that I'm sure you are all thinking. Well, let's have a look at it, shall we? Humming while walking and even holding hands, toasting and dining together. This is how we were able to witness the North and South Korean leaders last Friday on April the 27th, 2018. We're talking about the latest inter-Korea summit in which both countries committed to seeking a definitive peace agreement, technically both Koreas are still at war, to rebuild their relations and pursue the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. The summit took place in the demilitarized zone in the town of Panmunjom, in the exact place where the Korean War armistice was signed. Both the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and South Korean President Moon Jae-in displayed a level of complicity that would have been very hard to imagine only a few months ago. And the pictures from that day, they are going to go down in history, and I'm really not exaggerating here. The scenes that we saw of walks, handshakes and whispers between the two leaders wouldn't have been out of place in a romance movie.
Do you remember the honeymoon I promised you? Well, we're gonna have it.
And you know what? In a way, that was precisely what was happening. It was a political courtship between two leaders who really couldn't be more different. On the one hand, you have the South Korean President Moon Jae-in, a lawyer who specialized in human rights, a man of humble origins whose parents managed to flee from North Korea, and who was an activist for democracy during his youth. And on the other hand, we have Kim Jong-un, one of the worst tyrants on the planet. He's the omnipotent leader of one of the most terrible countries that anyone could possibly imagine. Because, my friends, despite the summit's images in which Kim Jong-un almost looked like a Care Bear, let's not forget who he really is. Let's not forget that the North Korean leader heads a regime of terror, in which human rights violations are part of the state's routine functions.
We've almost forgotten the allegations that he had his half-brother killed with a chemical weapon just last year, and that he had his uncle ripped apart with anti-aircraft guns. Gary Samore, Obama's White House coordinator for arms control and weapons of mass destruction.
In spite of that, and thanks to the images we saw and the declaration both governments agreed on, most of the press described this meeting as a historic day. The day when, once and for all, peace triumphed. Alright, so now the question really has to be, well, how true is all of this? Are things really going that well? In other words, are we facing a sincere exercise in diplomacy or simply a big marketing scam? Has the Pyongyang roadmap actually changed?
Dialogue is certainly better than a march to war. That said, we all need to keep our expectations in check. Wendy R. Sherman, U.S. Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs from 2011 to 2015, and North Korea Policy Coordinator in the Clinton administration.
We'll explore this, but first here's a question that I'm sure many of us have asked. How the hell did we go in just a few months from hearing the drums of war
용의 대륙간 탄도 로켓 시험 발사 대성공! 경의하는 최고領導者 김정은 동지께서 대륙간 탄도 로켓 파동 15용 시험 발사를 지도하셨습니다.
to such a, well, cordial and harmonious meeting? Well, we can come up with three different explanations that still complement the North Korean regime's new behavior, which in a very short time went from threatening the United States to suspending its nuclear and missile tests.
North Korea threatens to turn U.S. into Sea of Flames. North Korea says it will suspend nuclear and missile tests.
So let's take a look at the possible reasons for this change. And let me tell you, things are not as simple as they seem.
Pyongyang, we have a problem.
The first possible explanation. According to several analysts from the United States and South Korea and 2 studies by Chinese researchers, the Punggye-ri nuclear test center, located in the heart of a 2,200-meter high mountain known as Mount Mantap, could have collapsed after the last atomic test, in which a thermonuclear bomb of 250 kilotons was detonated by North Korea in this area on September 3, 2017. The explosion was so strong that it caused a 6.3 magnitude earthquake. Well, the collapse seems to have been confirmed, and it isn't clear whether the center is operational or not.
Based on the severity of the initial blast, the post-test tremors, and the extent of observable surface disturbances, we have to assume that there must have been substantial damage to the existing tunnel network under Mount Mantap. Frank V. Pabian and Jack Liu.
If it isn't operational, or if it's too badly damaged, it could take some time for the regime to rebuild it, enough to be able to hold new tests in a safe manner. This could have definitely been a factor that could have altered the deadlines, but it doesn't seem like this could have been the main cause for the change of discourse.
It's the economy, stupid.
Another hypothesis has to do with the effect of international sanctions on the North Korean economy. As you all know, North Korea is a very, very poor country. You see, for years, a large part of the international community has imposed sanctions on North Korea, but these have generally not affected the country's main partners: China, Russia, and Vietnam. However, all of this began to change with the sanctions that the United Nations began imposing on North Korea in 2017 in response to its continued nuclear tests. For the first time, these sanctions were greatly fulfilled by China, and that, dear viewer, was a very hard blow to North Korea. The vast majority of North Korean trade happens with China, and if that's cut, well, Pyongyang has a very serious problem. A problem that multiplied when, in September, after the last thermonuclear test, the United Nations Security Council banned all of North Korea's key exports, including coal, iron, and textiles.
This resolution is the single largest economic sanctions package ever leveled against the North Korean regime. The price the North Korean leadership will pay for its continued nuclear and missile development will be the loss of 1/3 of its exports and hard currency.
And not only that, in December, the same body agreed to limit their refined oil imports to 500,000 barrels per year, a 90% reduction compared to the amount of refined oil North Korea had purchased over the previous year. And what was the result of all of this? Well, several factories had to close due to a lack of raw materials, and the army, due to a lack of gasoline, had to resort to coal engines and even ox carts. And although it may surprise you, this situation doesn't only accentuate North Korea's weaknesses, but it also is a hard blow to Kim Jong-un's government, making economic development a big priority. And of course, these sanctions are also affecting the level of life the elites and the incipient middle class enjoy. Well, hold on a moment, an emerging middle class in North Korea? Well, yeah, you heard it right. In fact, here's a question for you. Do you think that a capitalist market can be developing within present-day North Korea? Well, stay tuned for an upcoming video that we have on that. But even though all of this is important and has certainly influenced the situation, it doesn't sound like something that could put the regime at risk, at least not for the moment.
If you think the North Koreans would revolt or the regime would collapse because of sanctions, you don't know anything about the North Koreans. These are people who survived the famine by eating weeds. Kang Mi-jin, a North Korean defector who works for South Korea's Central Bank of Korea.
So then why has Pyongyang changed its discourse so much? Or has it really just actually changed? North Korea is a nuclear power. That is simply a fact. According to American intelligence, this country currently could have between 20 and 60 warheads that are ready for use. In other words, Pyongyang has already achieved its great goal. It has its insurance. It has the best deterrent that has ever been built. Now, it is true that in the last April 27th Inter-Korea summit, North Korea promised to denuclearize the peninsula. But hold on a moment, because that doesn't mean it's willing to give up its nuclear weapons. First, because North Korea has already promised many things that they didn't do. For example, the negotiations and agreements of 1991, 1994, 2000, 2007, 2012. North Korean promises not exactly something new, and so far they have always been rather flimsy. You see, in 1994, Kim Jong-un's father, Kim Jong-il, even went so far as to start dismantling the nuclear program, allowing international inspectors to visit the country to verify the process. This was all in exchange for some generous help from the United States. However, years later, the world found out that it had been a scam. The program had continued developing clandestinely. In 2000, South Korean President Kim Dae-jung announced that a new day would come after returning from his visit with Kim Jong-il in Pyongyang. In 2007, South Korean President Roh Moo-hyun stated during his visit to North Korea that Kim Jong-il has shown a will to restore peace. And the second reason we can't assume North Korea will give up its nuclear weapons is that we may not be on the same page about what constitutes denuclearization. Allow me to explain. For Pyongyang, this term has got a lot to do not only with its nuclear weapons, but also with the US military's capabilities in the peninsula and in the region. And in any case, the truth is that it seems very difficult for Kim Jong-un to be willing to part with his best life insurance.
We must remember, North Korea is still North Korea. Kim is still the same person he was when he purged potential rivals, imprisoned thousands of his people, and had his relatives killed. This was a hopeful moment, but extreme caution is well warranted. Abraham Denmark, director of the Asian program at the Woodrow Wilson Center and former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Defense for East Asia.
In fact, this is something that intercepted North Korean communications have definitely shown. Everything seems to be part of some kind of roadmap. First, ensure the survival of the regime, something he has achieved with his nuclear arsenal. And second, negotiate with the international community to end the sanctions and to launch a reform program that can attract investment from China and South Korea. That means, although far from how things might seem at first, Pyongyang could simply be following a well-outlined plan. Was the Inter-Korea summit a big marketing exercise then? This, in a way, explains why South Koreans are so skeptical of the North's promises. I mean, just check out this survey. But now, well, it's your turn. Do you think North Korea will actually give up its nuclear program? Leave your comments below and also in this survey, and I really hope you enjoyed that video. Please do hit that like button if you did, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for brand new videos every Monday and every Thursday. Also, don't forget to check out our friends at the Reconsider Media podcast. They provided the vocals in this episode that were not mine, and as always, thank you for watching.